Soulmates, plenty to discuss on this Tuesday, January 24th. We want to welcome you to FOXSOUL's Black Report. I am Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. As always, we're honored to stand behind this desk each day to take you on a journey across Black America and the stories that impact our people.
Yeah, we're dedicated to bring you our news, our views, and our voice. So let's tap into today's top headline. The family of Tyre Nichols, a Black man who died following a confrontation with Memphis police, is speaking out after watching video of that encounter. Now, attorneys who watched the video with the family say officers beat Nichols for 3 minutes and compared it to the 1991 beating of Rodney King, saying they used Nichols as a human pinata.
He was 2 minutes from the house when they stopped him. He was less than 80 yards away when they murdered him. Yes, I said murder.
That's right.
Because when I walked into that hospital room, my son was already dead.
Officers say Nichols ran from them after a confrontation during the traffic stop, and another confrontation happened when they caught up with him. Nichols died after 3 days in the hospital. Authorities have only said that Nichols experienced a medical emergency. The police department has fired all officers involved, and the U.S. Justice Department has opened a civil rights investigation into the arrest.
In Alabama, a dying 71-year-old woman is being denied medical parole after being in prison for nearly 20 years. Leola Harris was convicted of killing a homeless man she'd befriended named Linnell Norris, who entered her residence and was shot shortly after. Now, since the 2001 murder, Harris has always maintained her innocence. Now at 71 years old with no prior criminal history, Harris is confined to a wheelchair, dependent on dialysis and suffering from end-stage renal disease. In just 6 minutes, the board agreed she should continue serving her 35-year sentence. Unfortunately, Harris was not even allowed to attend her parole hearing.
And some disturbing statistics here as the Equity Commission of Kenosha County, that's located in Wisconsin, has found that the city is 7 times more likely to arrest a Black adult than a white one. A report prepared by the Kenosha County Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission based on 2021 state crime data showed the arrest rate of white adults was 23.9 per 1,000 in population, compared with 159.7 per 1,000 for Black adults, or 6.7 times higher among Blacks. Black juveniles in the county were as many as 5.5 times more likely to be arrested by law enforcement than their white peers. Data through the end of 2022 is not yet available.
In a new class action lawsuit, it's alleged that the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services wrongfully incarcerated hundreds of children in juvenile detention centers after a court ordered them to be released to their guardian. The Cook County Public Guardian says these children have missed holidays, birthdays, and funerals of loved ones. According to other claims by lawyers, this problem has persisted for decades. The Illinois Department of Children and Family Services has yet to respond to the lawsuit.
And an Atlanta woman says the mental stress was way worse than the physical toll of being locked up for something she did not do. Fox 5's Morris Diggs joins us with this very bizarre story.
Initially, the police officer who made the stop was ordered by the court to pay this $1.5 million judgment. Literally, money was coming out of his check every month. The mayor stepped in and said, no, it's the city's responsibility. Now, you're going to hear from the woman who spent 5 months behind bars.
It was my first time ever in handcuffs.
A planned good night out at a Midtown club turned into Jazima Goldring, spending 5 months locked up for an alleged drug possession. But the substance checked by an Atlanta officer was not drugs.
An officer had approached me and I asked him why I was being stopped. He told me I had jaywalked.
She and a friend questioned. Goldring allowed the officer to look at her purse. He pulled out a round object called a stress ball.
He put it on the hood of the car and he took his blade and cut it open.
Her lawyer in a civil case claimed the entire stop was manufactured.
They were looking to remove people who they thought fit a profile. That's not their only motive, though.
We also learned that there is a quota system with the APD where officers are expected to make a certain number of arrests, a certain number of tickets.
Jeff Filipovitz said a field test did not show a positive result.
I'm going to charge her anyway because maybe it's positive.
GBI analyzed the contents of the stress ball. No cocaine, just sand. Even though the report was issued 1 month after Goldring was first locked up, she stayed in jail an additional 4 months.
I just, I lost hope.
Who was watching for that drug test result? No one. Because a prosecutor is not paying attention until the case is called up for trial, called up for a hearing. Public defender is already overburdened. And so this is a system that she was thrown into.
Word finally came to the jail to let Goldring go.
My heart dropped. No amount will really make up for the hurt.
For the young lady, she hopes this settlement will give her a fresh start. She hopes to launch a career in fashion. From Northeast Atlanta, I'm Morris Diggs, Fox 5 News.
Oh, 5 months you can never get back.
You can never get that time
Oh,
back.
my goodness.
And, the fact that the officer, knew that there wasn't there and said, well, maybe the test is positive, knowing that it wasn't. It was a stress ball. And, this is a young woman, that is managing anxiety like a lot of people do, and she's doing it the best she can. And, the fact that he took that stress ball and really, accused her, of something that wasn't true. And, you're right. She's not going to get that 5 months back in her life. And, this is just another example of just the miscarriage of justice that exists in the system that we need to solve for.
Yeah, and I hope she, pushes all the way through with whatever she may be deserving of. Again, 5 months is something that you can't get back, and it's reminiscent of a story that we talked about maybe a week or so ago. A young lady kept getting rejected for job applications, and she was wondering why, because she knew her record was clean. She goes into the police department, and they recognize her as being a violator, and they lock her up. It takes a week to get her name cleared. So, there seemed, and even though this situation is a little different, there seems to be a common denominator, which is the color of our skin, as to why either we're not believed or things take so long to get cleared. And so that in and of itself, in my opinion, is an issue as well.
And that case happened in Philadelphia.
That's right.
And part of what sort of, mucked up the evidence in that case is that basically it was a case of mistaken identity.
That's right.
They had mistaken her for someone in Louisiana or Texas that had been, robbing stores in the area.
That's
and
right.
So, you're right. It's an epidemic of us not being believed. And we see it in Philadelphia, and now we see it right here in this case. And so we'll keep our eye on it. But moving forward, this week, a federal judge dismissed a lawsuit by 3 former Whole Foods employees who said that they had been illegally fired for opposing the chain's alleged discriminatory discipline of workers who wore Black Lives Matter masks. U.S. District Judge Allison Burroughs in Boston says she found little evidence to refute Whole Foods' legitimate business explanations for strictly enforcing the dress code, and no significant evidence that had targeted the plaintiffs by firing them in the summer of 2020. Whole Foods, which is part of the Amazon.com Incorporated, says its long-maintained dress code fosters a welcoming, safe, and inclusive shopping environment.
And moving on to the former president, as Trump has dropped a federal lawsuit he filed against the Attorney General of New York. He withdrew the lawsuit a day after he and his lawyer were sanctioned for nearly $1 million for filing a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton and many other defendants. The lawsuit against Letitia James was filed after her office filed a civil lawsuit against Trump alleging fraud at his company. The Attorney General is suing Trump over allegedly fraudulent financial statements related to the Trump organization.
New year, new goals for organizations, especially the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus. They say their focus in 2023 is closing the achievement gap, helping reduce inequities in education, housing, and health care. Other caucus priorities include scholarships for Black or Hispanic students pursuing healthcare careers, and ending discrimination in housing appraisals. The group says while the caucus represents Black Americans. Their agenda isn't meant to serve one group.
All right, so let's take a minute to go back to Florida and talk a little bit about its governor. Man's name is Ron DeSantis, and he is speaking out on his decision to reject students access to an AP course on African American studies. As more outrage grows, Black community leaders are also speaking out. Fox 13 in Tampa Bay has the very latest.
Comes to a pilot AP African American Studies program for Florida high school students. Governor DeSantis says,
"We want education, not indoctrination. If you fall on the side of indoctrination, we're going to decline."
The Florida Department of Education previously said in a letter content in the course was contrary to Florida law and lacked educational value. Today, the governor gave some examples why.
When I heard it didn't meet the standards, I figured, yeah, they may be doing serious. It's way more than that. This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory.
He says the course imposes an agenda on students and also includes lessons on abolishing prisons.
So that is more of ideology being used under the guise of history, and we want to do history. And that's what our standards for Black history are. It's just cut and dried history.
But faith and community leaders gathered today to push back against that.
Black history matters. Black history is not inferior. And Black history does not lack educational value.
They argue laws like the Stop Woke Act, which limits how race is discussed in schools, makes any teaching on the topic difficult.
Teachers are petrified to really teach what they want to teach. You know, they've got to kind of skate along the edges of what really transpired during years of slavery.
They say that's why there's now a call for everyone to rally with them this week, because they say this is bigger than one course.
You want to erase Black history. Tomorrow, what will it be? And people need to understand, everybody needs to know what transpired back in some of our darkest days so that we don't repeat that ever.
You know, sometimes you know how you have to pull up a little bit and breathe, because I saw that DeSantis response yesterday, and you just want to go through the TV, and I don't condone violence, but you just want to lay hands, if you will. Listen, whose standards? By our whose standards? When you're speaking from outside of the culture. And, it's so ironic that we're only just a few days away from Black History Month. And even within our culture, we've kind of questioned the validity and the need, if you will, for Black history, as we have, come to discover that it is all day, every day. We don't need to be reminded that we're Black, and even the whole Black History 365 campaign, being pushed. But now more than ever, especially with this happening, maybe Black History Month 2023 is going to be quite significant, because now we see that there are folks out here who still do not want us to bask in it, to learn from it, and to evolve from it, whether it be Black folks or folks from outside of the race, the culture, that need to learn about our history, because it's American history.
You're right, and I think there are a number of folks across the country that recognize that this course that is not being allowed in Florida, a course that is been called, has been said to have no educational value. Well, in 60 schools across the country for the 2022-2023 school year, it's being piloted. And I think, this is really an example of the latest installment in Governor DeSantis really politicizing education in Florida. He's been on a crusade to sort of stop wokeness, and which means he's against teaching Black history, which means he's against saying gay in schools, which means that what happens in Florida really impacts folks across the country. And so we really have to stay vigilant on this. I know there was a really great piece in Newsweek that was published by the NAACP and David Johns of the National Black Justice Coalition, really talking about DeSantis' obsession in ignoring Florida's inequities. And so folks should take a look at that.
Absolutely. All right, there's still more to come. Outraged parents and a school bus driver that has been suspended.
That's right. The latest from a Georgia school board that's apologizing to students. We'll be right back. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.